Well, guys, it's another beautiful day in the Wacko dictatorship that Canada has become under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and particularly terrible premiers like BC Premier David Eby. I was going to just do some sort of smaller segmented videos like I normally do, but I thought that everything in the news cycle this week is so wacky, so obnoxious. I just wanted to talk about it in its own pre recorded long form video. Starting off with the story that keeps on trying to live when it doesn't know that it should be dead. The whole thing about Pierre Poilievre going to the anti-carbon tax protest on the Nova Scotia border, talking to a few people, which apparently has been literally writing 4 or 5 articles a day from the legacy media. This is like fodder for them to talk about all day long, even though there's nothing going on. So I want to quickly cut to this segment from whatever show that Rosemary Barton currently runs on CBC. I guess it's part of the National, a show that nobody should watch and will probably do terrible things to your brain if you watch a full episode of the National like I've done in the past. But here we have all these guests just whining about the fact that Poilievre talks to voters, because that is the actual sign of being far right. You talk to voters. And if we go through any of those voters' backgrounds, if any of them have said or done anything unsavory, then you're an unsavory person. Unless you're a Liberal Party official, in which you can literally do and say whatever you want, and you'll never be declared far left, even if you're Justin Trudeau, and you go to India with a convicted terrorist part of your entourage. But here's Rosemary Barton and all these clowns talking on the National.
The voters should not be put in the position of having to wonder
Yes.
Whether the next Prime Minister of Canada is a mainstream, normal politician or somebody who hangs out with extremists.
And the Diagalon thing, when I talk about extremists, it's the Diagalon flag that we're pointing to, whether he saw it or knew it was there.
The flag, which was a Sharpied on flag on a trailer door that apparently had been there for years. This is what we are having 4 overpaid foolish people sitting on a panel talking about. I'm trying to use deliberately more like lax language to be nice, wacko individuals on this panel. We are paying all these people probably hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to sit around musing about what implications there might be politically for Pierre Poilievre walking out of a trailer that had a Diagalon flag crudely sketched in on the bottom left corner.
There is, I think, a different question.
And you should be very careful about where you go and what symbols might be there and who you're associating with if you don't know who these people are. But beyond that, I think, Andrew said he's kind of, winking at conspiracy theorists. He's not just...
Is he actually? He met with them, said, yes, I'm against the carbon tax, and Justin Trudeau's an idiot, and he says a lot of BS or whatever. That's winking and nodding at, like, racists? Which one? Like, can you point out the one guy that Pierre Poilievre was winking and nodding to? He's not trying to attract the Diagalon people who are led by Jeremy Mackenzie. I know it's technically a fake group, but I don't think he's trying to attract Jeremy Mackenzie, who made a joke about sexually assaulting his wife. And it's sick to even propose that Pierre Poilievre is doing that.
Just winking. He is engaging them. He is affirming what they have said on the World Economic Forum, for example, that Justin Trudeau's government is run by the World Economic Forum. We've seen that during door knocks. And
that's not wrong to say that Justin Trudeau has the same political positions as someone like Klaus Schwab and many other people associated with the WF. And it seems to be like a not friends club, but some sort of association of left-wing politicians that people should not be comfortable with Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland comfortably palling around with, because they have very radical proto-socialist type ideas.
Placating, encouraging people who, frankly, are detached from reality is not the kind of leadership that we should expect for somebody who wants to be the prime minister of the country.
Oh, goodness. These people are paid to do commentary on the news. These people are the ones who are detached. It's wrong to say that the WF's ideas might be outside of the Canadian mainstream and they are not in the best interests and they are not, something that most Canadians would agree with. That's all that Pierre Poilievre would be pointing out. That Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland are very left-wing ideologues. They are left-wing ideologues. And so they believe in and support a lot of what the WF does, even though if you pulled people on the individual measures that the WF supports, nobody would be in favor of them. But if you mention something bad the Liberals are doing, that's called a conspiracy, and that's extreme. Even though they're all whining about supposedly Pierre Poilievre associating with extremists, when again, Justin Trudeau brought Just Paul Atwal on his first India trip, a man who was convicted of trying to beat a British Columbia premier to death. I believe it was before he was premier, to be fair, but he tried to beat I think Ujjal Dosanjh to death. I think he also was involved in other plots, like he shot a former Indian minister in Canada. Like he brought him to India. Justin Trudeau openly associates with Khalistanis, with people associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, and no, none of these people would freak out about it. And Andrew Coyne sitting on the panel there pretending to be like the erudite conservative, but I'm not in favor of all this populist Pierre Poilievre stuff. But Andrew Coyne doesn't have a conservative bone in his body. All he is in favor of is institutionalism. He thinks the conservative thing to do is maintain the institutions of Canada. Even if it's a terrible institution that the Liberals created 5 minutes ago, it would now be an anti-conservative thing in Andrew Coyne's mind to to take it apart. The only thing he's in favor of taking apart is maybe the carbon tax. And even then, he'll probably still call Pierre Poilievre an extremist once he is the prime minister and he acts the carbon tax, and Andrew Coyne clutches his pearls because you didn't replace it with anything. Now Canada's gonna burn up because we don't have a carbon tax or some carbon price. I don't take these people seriously at all. Anyways, I'm going to move on to another clip of the Liberals whining. This is Justin Trudeau around the same time, I believe, that Pierre Poilievre was leaving the chamber, trying to now accuse the Conservatives again, because this is the only narrative Liberals have, that the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre are associating with the far right.
Any leader that needs the support of a far-right white nationalist group to fundraise and get closer to power does not deserve elected office. This is a 19-year career politician who knows exactly what he's doing and thinks he can get away with it. It was a choice to pander to white nationalists, not an accident. And it is a choice to continue to not condemn them and condemn everything they stand for in his quest for votes.
Do I even have to say anything about that? What can you say about that? He's pandering to white nationalists. How? What did he say? He's a man who's married to a Venezuelan woman. He has, Anita Poilievre and him have mixed race kids. I'm pretty sure that Pierre Poilievre isn't down with the whole white nationalist sort of thing. As one of my friends, Raheem Mohammed, pointed out in the National Post, part of his stump speech when he was running as leader was saying it doesn't matter if your last name is Poilievre or Patel, Martin or Mohammed, we're all Canadians. Do you think that man is trying to wink and nod at Jeremy McKenzie, a man who made jokes about sexually assaulting his wife? No. And it's a disgusting lie to even say that. But that's all that we have left in Justin Trudeau's wacko dictatorship. It's disgusting lies to pretend that he is the last line of defense for democracy in Canada. That is something he actually said. I think it was on a Vox podcast. And if you're talking to Vox or people from AJ Plus, you truly are far left, because those are far left outlets, openly socialist or even Qatari funded outlets. But whatever, I guess Trudeau can do what he wants and he can't be accused of anything. That's just how it works. I actually am mandated to like Justin Trudeau. If you work in media, you have to like Justin Trudeau or you're far right. It's so silly. And then we get to, and I don't need to play a clip of this because you've all seen it and it's a bit long seeing the proceedings go on, but Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, Poilievre was technically ejected from the House of Commons and the rest of the Conservatives rightfully followed him out of the chamber, getting kicked out of Parliament for saying wacko. Really? We're going to clutch our pearls over the word wacko? I find it just tiring that we're going to have all of these journalists from the Toronto Star, Global News, and you have all these other liberal activists saying, I can't believe that Pierre Poilievre is degrading Parliament. How could he say such vulgar language like wacko in the House of Commons? And I'm a little bit maybe disbelieving that you guys are actually offended by this. Justin Trudeau, and I'm not saying this because I don't like Justin Trudeau, he's the current prime minister, but it's pretty arguable that he's one of the most corrupt prime ministers we've ever had. Most prime ministers, they have one big scandal and it defeats them. He's had 4 or 5. We Charity, SNC-Lavalin, CCP interference, and a few others, Arrive scam. There's tons of scandals associated with Justin Trudeau, and we're going to be offended by someone saying wacko in the House of Commons. No, you guys are not actually offended. You just don't want the Conservatives to win. And that's fine. You cannot want the Conservatives to win. But all this pearl clutching over the word wacko, pretending like you're just so into principle, and this is why you can't stand these words being used. Justin Trudeau, back in 2013, literally in Parliament, cried out, this back obviously when Harper was Prime Minister, "Oh, you pieces of S." And there was not nearly as much elevation over that. If anything, people saw it as like, oh, wow, what an idiot after that happened. And then he had to apologize. Obviously, he'd have to apologize for language like that, even if it wasn't considered unparliamentary. You could be ejected for it. Naturally, you'd want someone to apologize for being that vulgar. There was not just news broadcasts about, wow, I can't believe Justin Trudeau would degrade the House of Commons that way. Like, people might have made comments, but there wasn't the sort of puff piece generating buzz around those words, and now there is around wacko, and everyone's just gaslighting you, pretending like you're weird if you don't think this is bad. And so you get people like this on social media posting comments like this: unparliamentary behavior is yet another attack on Canada's institutions. The erosion of civility, the decline of deference to expertise, and polarization are tearing the fabric of Canadian society. All of this seems deliberate and designed to destroy liberal democracy. Yes, guys. Oh, sorry, I had that a little bit small on screen, but you can see what I was reading there. Yes, guys, it is destroying liberal democracy in Canada because somebody said a word that you didn't like. Not even a vulgar word. If anything, a silly and lighthearted negative label to put on Justin Trudeau. I think it was even deliberately done that Pierre Poilievre picked a word that nobody in their right mind should have a problem with, just to see the reaction. Because you think middle-class Canadians who are struggling to pay for things are looking at what Pierre Poilievre said and saying, no, I can't vote for him anymore. Can't vote for him anymore. Well, he's going to lower my taxes. He's going to stop institutional corruption. You know, he is an actual normal person, unlike Justin Trudeau, who's a raving lunatic left-wing ideologue. But he said, wacko, can't vote for that guy. But these guys are gaslighting themselves. They're not even gaslighting us anymore. This is how it works in the wacko dictatorship. The Liberals aren't even trying to gaslight you into thinking that they're right and the Conservatives are far right or whatever. That the Liberals are the ones who are defending democracy. They're just gaslighting themselves and their small base into thinking that they're the heroes. So when they inevitably lose, it was a hero's defeat. We were fighting for civility and honor, and it was the Conservatives fighting for far-right white supremacy and incivility. Does this person not think it's degraded Canada's institutions like a little bit? Just a little bit? That we've had so much obvious corruption in government? Does that not kind of undermine the institutions of Canada? Does it kind of not undermine our institutions when, for some reason, the Prime Minister has not really answered a serious question over the past 8 years? That there are people who in the Liberal Party are obviously working on behalf of lobbyist groups. That was something that I believe it was Mark Miller just answered, or somebody else. It was somebody in the Liberal government who said it's totally fine for him and other members of his staff who have direct ties to lobbying organizations and different companies while they are in charge of making regulations for those areas of government. We have people saying that right now. No outrage from the Toronto Star. They frankly don't care, because really they just want their team to win. And so institutional corruption, totally fine as long as it's being done for the aims of the Liberal Party. If you even buy a $13 glass of orange juice as Conservative, that's when all the Liberals become super fiscal hawks who don't like a single dime being waste of taxpayer money. But then we all have to clutch our pearls because did you know that the leader of the opposition office has billed taxpayers $1 million this last year? I don't even know what the number is, but it's like, that's not that surprising. We're the second biggest country in the world, and obviously the opposition leader has to travel around the country a lot to advocate for the positions he supports. And then Jagmeet Singh is trying to attack Poilievre for spending too much, when Poilievre's office, I believe, only spends about $250,000 a year for his staff members and all their resources. And Jagmeet Singh spends like $500,000 every single year. And that's not even travel expenses. That's just like, pads of paper and office staff members and other sort of secretaries and assistants. Like Jagmeet Singh spends way more than Pierre Poilievre, but we're all going to pretend that we're deeply offended that Pierre Poilievre spends any money, but Jagmeet Singh's spending, that's fine. He's a socialist. He's allowed to spend too much. And that's where never let the left do this. They love to use your principles against you and pretend as if they will pretend to be principled depending on if they can benefit from it. If they can benefit from taking on conservative positions, they will do it. I know tons of people like this. They will start to invoke conservative principles and ideas when they can use it against you as if you're not living up to your principles. Never let them do this. They don't actually believe in the principles that they're trying to cite, and they don't actually know if you're violating your principles or not. They're just merely saying it, so you will let them do even more unprincipled things that you would never agree to. So they will say, find 2% of your argument or the position that you've taken that might be inconsistent with your general principles about politics. But then they'll say that because you are wrong on 2% of this issue, you must let us do 100% of the unprincipled things we want to do. The perfect example of this is people like Maxwell Faucet, who I believe he works for the National Observer or whatever his paper is. The king of technicalities. He will find technicalities in every single argument you have to prove that either you somehow are hypocritical or somehow your contention is not 100% correct, because in this fringe part of the issue, that somehow his standard is actually it's more accurate, it's better suited, his policy prescription somehow makes sense on this fringe part of the issue at hand when you're right on everything else. I hate people that argue that way. People who with blanket rezoning in Calgary will argue, well, you can't be against blanket rezoning because I thought you were in favor of freedom. So that means that you're not actually allowed to pick whatever neighborhood you want to live in and the style and layout of that neighborhood. If you're pro-freedom, you must live in a neighborhood that is jam-packed with sixplexes, fourplexes, row housing right next to single detached family homes. And it is the pro-freedom position to want that. Even though if you point out, wait, you aren't advocating against lowering property taxes, you aren't advocating against the city getting its budget under control so that actually you can pay for things, you're not in favor of the government actually saving money on consultants and whatnot in order to pay for some low-income housing for people, they will then say, that's beside the point. You're not living up to the principles that I've made up in my head that should apply purely to you. Never engage with stuff like this. Anyways, here's the Liberal Party posting a response from Mark Miller on Pierre Poilievre walking out. And the Liberals trying to spin this in their favor is quite sad. This has been what Greg Fergus did in kicking Pierre Poilievre out of Parliament was one of the greatest fundraising emails the Conservatives could have ever gotten. He is the opposition leader, and he got kicked out of the House for saying wacko. Do you think that the Liberals have not just generated the Conservative Party about $50,000 in the course of the last 24 hours? If you don't think that that's what happened, then you're just out of your mind. But anyways, here's Mark Miller trying to respond to what Pierre Poilievre got kicked out of the House for.
Do you think what happened today is going to fuel the narrative that he's being silenced by the Liberals?
Who's being silenced?
Pierre.
That guy's never shut his mouth in his life. Who silences him? He keeps saying dumb things. I think it would be good if he shut up. He shut his yap once in a while. But the stuff that he does in the House of Commons is disgraceful. He plays on that. He's a guy that likes to play outside the lines. When someone steps out the lines to confront him, he freezes.
That is just the most elitist way of putting this. And the Liberal Party posted this and said 10 out of 10, no notes. He's never shut his yap. That legitimately sounds like something that would be said in a communist country if someone was executed for like disagreeing with Vladimir Lenin or Stalin, and they execute him, the person, and someone asks them, like an American journalist confronts them and says, well, don't you think that that's kind of violating his free speech and that maybe your critics saying that you're silencing speech are correct? And he's like, well, all these people I'm executing, they wouldn't shut up. Obviously, I wasn't silencing them. We just eventually had to step in. So he's saying, well, we're not silencing him, but it would be good if someone did silence him and he should shut his mouth and he was outside the lines. They can't even make sense of their own position here. And again, this is not going to help them in the polls whatsoever. I want to see if I can bring up, I have to load it on screen here. But the current polling does not show that what the Liberals are doing are working. And people could say, well, this is just something that's happened in the last 24 hours. Why? Of course, it just happened in the last 24 hours. That's not lost on me. But the thing is that this is what the Liberals' playbook has been for probably the last year, that the Conservatives are far right, they're a threat to democracy, that they have no plan. That's my favorite one. They have no plan because they want to cut government spending and different departments and whatnot. That is a plan, because right now our problem is overspending. There is no new government program that Pierre Poilievre could propose that would solve our problem. So naturally, cutting is a plan. Fiscal responsibility is a plan, but leftists, especially in the media, don't consider it a fulsome policy position unless it requires billions of more dollars to be spent. If you legitimately, by saving money, that is the absence of a plan, because it costs negative dollars to implement cost-saving measures like cuts to various useless departments in government. But this is what the current polling looks like based on the Ledger poll that just came out. The Conservatives are now at 44% and the Liberals are at 23%. The Conservatives are at 21% ahead of the Liberals. They almost have double what the Liberals have. The NDP are down there at 17%. The Bloc Québécois are at 8%, and the Green Party of Canada is 5%. PPC at 2%. Guys, you got to pack it in. Other 1%. The reason why the Conservatives are winning is not even just like the personal magnetism of Pierre Poilievre. I like Pierre Poilievre. I'm, shameless plug, running for the Conservative Party in Calgary Signal Hill, where I'm trying to run for the nomination. Shameless plug again. If you live in the riding of Calgary Signal Hill on the west side of Calgary, go check out my website in the description below, WyattClaypool.com, and buy a Conservative Party membership. Vote for me number 1 on your ballot. But people are voting Conservative in part because they like Poilievre and they like his more common sense approach that he's been marketing. But they also just hate Trudeau and the Liberals. The Liberals don't realize that this is a them problem. They just simply assume, or at least they trick themselves into thinking, that it's that Poilievre is tricking Canadians into voting for him. It's a far-right conspiracy to get Canadians to hate Justin Trudeau and to like Poilievre, and they merely have to pierce the veil and prove that Poilievre is a phony who has no plan, he has far-right connections and all this stuff. It's not going to work, guys, because the problem is you. The problem is you and your crazy policies. Because, it's kind of one of the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And now Canadians do not want to be the fool. They have seen for 8 years disastrous negative outcomes out of all the Liberal Party policies. And no matter how many wonks get on television and say, actually, the policy helped, and if only the policy was doubled in size, things would be much better. People don't fall for that these days. When the policies keep getting implemented with the promise that in 1 year, 2 years' time, everything will be better, and 4 years on, everything is much worse, nobody's just going to say, well, give Justin 4 more years. And what I always say is that if Trudeau would just almost come out and admit that he's made mistakes, he'd actually do far better in the polls. Part of the reason people hate the Liberals is of how out of touch they are. It's not even the policy. The policy is probably 40-60% of the problem. But another 40% of the problem for the Liberals is the fact that they just pretend that there are no problems, that everything's actually great. So whenever they release numbers saying, well, actually, Canada reduced child poverty by 2.3 million children over the past 5 or so years. No, they have not. Food bank use is up. There's a lot of other indicators of economic weakness that are way up. And you can't pretend that this is a good situation the country is in simply because we found a fringe metric to say that we're doing great. Whenever they roll out the GDP numbers and saying, well, we grew by 0.5% in January alone. Yeah, it's all government spending. All the manufacturing and oil and gas and mining sectors are either suppressed in their growth or actually in negative growth. Nobody is going to pretend that because the government hired 50,000 other people that we have our employment rate is getting much better and the economy is booming. Every single year of the Soviet Union, they could have claimed that the GDP is up, things are better, and in a technical sense, they would have been better. But obviously, when we're in a sluggish economy that's not growing and in fact contracting, if just finding a fringe metric that shows that technically we're doing well is not satisfactory at this point. You actually need to make things noticeably better. Not just better on paper, but actually better. And because the Liberals refuse to acknowledge that, people don't like being fooled. And when you're trying to fool them, when they are struggling to make payments for things, and you bring out statistics like saying, well, you know that Calgary is actually the third best city in North America to live in. Okay, you raise property taxes. I can't afford my rent anymore. I don't care about some random organization's ranking of cities. I don't care that UNICEF says Canada is actually the 5th best for child poverty in the top 39 Western countries. No, I'm not going to buy that. Luxembourg somehow is at the bottom of those lists, even though it's one of the richest countries on the planet. I'm not going to pretend like whoever in StatsCan cooks up these numbers is actually dealing honestly with us. Anyways, but that was what is going to lead me to just quickly talking about drug decriminalization in British Columbia and how this is oddly going to be a really big wedge issue for Justin Trudeau and the Liberals in a negative sense. Pierre Poilievre, in a video, like I said in a video yesterday, is going after both British Columbia Premier David Eby and Justin Trudeau really hard on this issue. And it's because I think he senses that as unpopular as Justin Trudeau is in Canada, somehow David Eby is even less popular. Yes, he is technically the second most popular premier in the country. That's only a byproduct of the fact that there really wasn't any opposition to the NDP for the last year and a half. So naturally, a lot of people were artificially saying that they were voting NDP and artificially saying that they like David Eby because the only other option was like Kevin Falcon, and nobody likes him. But now that John Rustad is actually getting more popular, I guarantee a lot of the positive metrics on David Eby are going to sort of reverse now. So David Eby, because of all the radical policies he's pushing, is a massive liability to Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau should be scared to be associated with David Eby at all. And he's so scared to be associated with David Eby, as David Eby is trying to reverse decriminalization. Justin Trudeau won't even acknowledge the effort and help pass federal policies or enable the BC government to start arresting people for using illicit drugs in public parks. It's a super weak walk back since it really doesn't change that much. But David Eby is begging Justin Trudeau to let him enforce the law on illicit drug use in parks and to make a cutout in the decriminalization policy that Justin Trudeau has allowed for that still allows the BC government to arrest drug users in these parks. Because that's kind of the problem here. It should be just automatic that you arrest drug users, people using illicit drugs like meth and crack and fentanyl in parks, in front of schools, and in front of private businesses. But the problem is that because BC has been given a blanket decriminalization just waiver, well, you can't just say, well, but we're going to arrest them in the parks. Well, is decriminalization active or not? An RCMP officer cannot arrest somebody for using illicit drugs when we are under a state of decriminalization, because what am I charging this person under? What am I arresting or detaining this person under? They're using drugs, like illicit drugs in a park when decriminalization is active. There's no statute that says, yes, you can use illicit drugs, but not here. But Justin Trudeau refuses to even pass a federal policy that would make that a chargeable offense because he doesn't even want to acknowledge David Eby's existence at this point, which in a strange way means that Justin Trudeau is owning this issue even harder because he refuses to help David Eby walk back some of his decriminalization. Now Justin Trudeau is taking ownership of decriminalization. That's why Poilievre's walking out media posts, like social media posts like this, going after them and tying the two together. This is such a bad look for Justin Trudeau to be seen as the enabler of David Eby, and he entirely has been. Since decriminalization started getting rolled out around the country, Justin Trudeau and his government have been the ones signing waivers and saying that they will get out of the province's way if they want to let people smoke meth wherever they want. And this has led to some of the highest drug deaths in all of North and South America, in Vancouver, on the east side of Vancouver, and actually all over Vancouver now. And everyone who says, well, it stops death, or it reduces the amount of overdose deaths to have these safe injection sites, to have safe supply programs. No, it does not. All that does means that for someone to overdose and die, they require now 7 overdoses rather than just 3 before you have the safe injection sites and safe supply programs. But the amount of overdoses absolutely skyrockets, because even though you and I, as rational adults, would never start using fentanyl or coke or any illicit drugs just because there is a slight bit of a safety net, there are some people who will react to those incentives. You cannot be surprised when incentives and safety nets are set up and people react to it with more risky behavior. If you enable risky behavior, you can't be shocked that there is more people doing said risky behavior. And so, yes, we keep fewer deaths from happening per overdose, but the amount of overdoses, the denominator of overdoses, extends rapidly. And so we have way more people dying. We just have them dying in a more technically safe sense. It is the most Canadian British Columbia thing in our wacko dictatorship that we celebrate safer dying. That this person is going to deteriorate on the street and die, but we want it to be in a safe, comfortable manner. It reminds me of the whole George Carlin bit about, soft language around things. It's not an overdose. It's an accidental indulgence. We should be using terms like this if we want to be truly inclusive to those who are poisoning themselves effectively. And we need to, and that's exactly what safe supply is. It's a soft, bureaucratic, corporate term, avoiding the fact that the government is giving people government manufactured smack. What? That's insane. And the fact that people are talking about Pierre Poilievre using the term wacko in Parliament, or being next to a trailer door that Diagalon Sharpied on flag, that is something that the legacy media is talking about when nobody is acknowledging. Like, there are some, obviously, Adam Zivo at the National Post and other conservative commentators will talk about this, but all the prim and proper, neutral, down the middle of the road and pearl-clutching legacy media journalists barely talk about this. They don't talk about this as a crisis. They don't describe David Eby as a radical. He is absolutely a radical. He hates the police. He wrote a book about how to sue the police for frivolous reasons. He voted to defund the police. He was part of defunding the police movements. He's forced the police to invest more in social worker programs and away from actual on-the-street officers. The man is a left-wing, far-left radical, but the media will never describe him that way because that would be far-right to do. Describing the left accurately is, in fact, very far right and very, very bad. It is opposing the wacko dictatorship, and opposing the wacko dictatorship is the most extreme thing you could possibly do in this country. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. Hopefully you like this longer form type of content where I talk about several issues over time. Hopefully this doesn't feel like it grades on your nerves too much or I ramble too much. I'll make myself more concise over time. But if you like this and you want to support the National Telegraph, I have our legal fund linked in the description below. It's the Give, Send, Go link. If you want to donate there, you can help us support us in the stupid lawsuit we're in with a Chinese billionaire developer suing us for fake defamation that he cannot prove. And after more than, I think, 2 years and 4 or 5 months, he still hasn't provided any evidence that we defamed him. All he asks for is how many people viewed the article, how many people tweeted out the article, because he's trying to prove that a lot of people saw information about him that was defamatory, even though he cannot prove it's even defamatory in the first place. Annoying, but if you want to donate, any money really helps us out. And then, again, Wyatt Claypool, am running for the riding of Calgary Signal Hills Conservative Party nomination. So if you live in this riding, please buy a membership and vote for me in the Conservative Party nomination. Visit my website in the description below, WyattClaypool.com. And then the TNT Telegram channel is also in the description below if you want to get instant notifications every time we upload a new piece of content, whether it's to this channel or to another TNT affiliated YouTube channel or article publication. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. Have a good one.